Yeah, it's funny since taking the contracting role. A lot of my friends or just people in the stream they think I'm sure you guys have got it the whole time. Any association with Riot, it's just like, hey, can you buff my favorite champion, nerf my most hated champion, and ban this person?
Why did you do this?
Well, yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I don't really have anything to do with any of that stuff, but sure.
Hello and welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia Season 10, Episode number 9. We are back after a small, short break. We did a little vacation down to Brazil. LYON defended our honor, salvaged our reputation after the disaster that was America's Cup. I mean, they did about as expected. But imagine what the conversation would be like if they had lost to Loud at the moment. I kind of don't want to imagine it. So thankfully,
you're imagining it. You can't stop yourself.
Thankfully, though, it's not reality. They were able to salvage it for us. Cool news, though. After First Stand, they did announce, actually kind of during First Stand a little bit, that Brazil is also going to get another world seed. So yeah, that's super cool for Brazil. And we were able to defend our honor. So everybody's win-win all around, Handshakes all around for everybody.
Are they taking one of ours, though?
No.
Good.
They just get an extra
one. You know
one.
what? Happy for them.
Yeah, all good.
It's another team we compete at Worlds.
There you go.
I mean,
Cloud9 don't play them.
Exactly. I will say LYON did better in some ways than I expected at First Stand and worse than others, right? I think, depending on kind of like what aspects of the game you're looking at, obviously would have hoped for a more dominant performance over CB LOL, but that was fine. That was whatever. Against the JDG series was the one that was kind of like weird because this was a series
winnable scenario.
It looks so winnable. It's funny to say in a series where they didn't win any games really, but it's, I'm looking at this series and it felt more winnable, more like they should have won it than the FlyQuest series that went 5 games. I don't know if that sounds crazy, but it just felt like JDG was not that good and was not playing that well, and LYON was getting into winning positions every game. They're winning every early game, but at the same time, they're unable to actually close those games, right? They're failing in the objective setups. They're failing in these big moments. And it was kind of interesting because there's so much discussion about, whose fault is it? Who faulted it? Who are we going to blame? And we got some of the team comms. And as much as Inspired was giga smurfing in some of those games, I also felt like it's kind of like this when you get into this bad attitude or kind of like this negative attitude that sometimes you see in solo queue where someone's smurfing and they want their team to do something, but the team isn't doing it. So they just go ahead and play as though they're doing it. They're like, we should go contest this dragon. I'm really strong right now. But your top laner is walking top lane and your mid lane's farming raptors, but you're going to the dragon anyway because that's what you should do. And I almost got those vibes a little bit from some of these engages that Inspired was going for, where it's I think he is making the correct decision, and they release their comms and you can see okay, he is making the correct decision if everything is there for the setup. But there's this one example is the Nocturne game where we're up 6k early. We have 3 early dragons and he Nocturne ults into the back line and Saint is top lane still pushing to get gold for a Seeker's Arm Guard. Dokla has already Mega Nard out middle and his Narbar is expiring, so he's going to go mini. And it's yeah, should you win this fight up 6k? Yeah, you should win it 10 times out of 10. But your mid laner is top lane, and your top laner has no mega, so now it's not a good fight anymore, right? And so it's that was the thing that was weird about it to me, is that we kept getting these winning positions, but then we kept choosing these horrible fights from those positions. And
a lot of them occurred around dragons. That one was a dragon fight, a very important dragon fight. That was, I believe it was going to be the soul, right? That was, and they had all 3 other dragons, and like you say, a big gold lead. And that was an ultimate, that was an ultimate engage. Another one was when he was on Malphite, and Berserker takes this weird, dangerous route through the dragon pit. He's fed Corki at this one. That's the one where they also had comms listen-ins where he takes a bunch of damage going into the dragon pit, and then he has to Valk out of the dragon pit, and then the fed Corki is in a really bad spot and hurt already. And so it's everything goes into chaos. But then the Malphite ultimate that Inspired goes for is there's 0 damage follow-up. He Malphites into the pit, and it's not low for a smite, and then back out. So it's another one where the scenario is a super scuffed scenario at this point, but it does, in that that reality, seemed like a pretty bad, like choice to go for. And then there was one that I remember clearly where the camera is looking at Berserker Ezreal recalling in mid lane, like the bottom of it. And I'm like, Inspired is summoning the Herald. I'm like, and Ezreal's still recalling. I'm like, he's about to jump in that. I'm like, Ezreal, like, stop recalling or like something. And you can tell it was like, one guy is doing something and he's like, and they're standing right next to each other. It's the same frame. Like the screen is looking at it the whole time. And you're like, one of you guys has got to like change course here. But then nope, Ezreal goes back and Inspire goes into the Herald and drives into the tower. And then the other team 4v5s us. And I was like, what in the hell is going on? Like, I don't know. There were so many frustrating moments, I guess, is kind of the feeling for watching some of those. Cause I did feel like, basically I felt like we were a good team, but maybe I was really feeling a disconnect between the story we were telling at the end of lock-in tournament was that everybody's on board, marching orders, inspired directions. This team is so in sync, like they're doing everything the same. And then at first stand, I was like, it's the opposite. Everyone, complete communication breakdown or something. Nobody's on the same page anymore. But like we were a good team getting into good spots and then completely fumbling so many fights.
Yeah, that recall incident, it's just it's kind of hard. I feel like a lot of those things you were talking about where, Inspired sees the play and he goes for it, but not everyone's ready. I promise you so many like post-game discussions come down to those situations where Inspired's going to have the point of view like, they're doing this illegal thing, we need to punish them. And then someone's like, well, I had to recall or whatever. Or, they just weren't in position. And so it always comes down to, like, whose fault is it? And I guess in reality, it's sort of both. But
yeah,
I think for me, I'm more on Inspired side for this sort of thing because for the reason that I think a lot of the time when you're in pro, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? Like anyone who's played League, there's so many things going on that you are mostly going to be focused on what the opponents are doing, or ideally, right? And so you should be able to rely on your teammates to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if you feel like you have to double check, like, hey, is my AD carry recalling as we're going for this play? Or like, is my Leona randomly bot lane when we're going for this other play? I think, obviously you could do those things, but at the same time, if you're expected to do that, it'll make you less decisive and hesitate more. So,
but if your Galio is top lane and you're Nocturne ulting into the back line, whose fault is it? Like the Galio should have been there, and that mistake has already been made. Though that's where you lose me a bit because I'm like, that chip has sailed. Saint messed up. He greeted for the Seekers. He should have based early and been at the Dragon because you should win that fight from 6k up. But like once that mistake has been made, which is the worst mistake? Having to give up the Dragon or Nocturne ulting in the backline with no solo laners there and losing the whole game because you lose the Dragon, you lose the fight, you lose the Baron, right? Like that's
gotta teach him a lesson.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the thing I always say.
That's where it kills me. I'm like, yeah, Inspired is the best player on the team. Yeah, Inspired built this massive gold lead and played insane early game on that Nocturne. He was just running the game on these invades. But also, no one pressed R for you. You pressed it with your teammates not there. Yeah, they should have been there, but you still pressed it and cost the whole game.
Yeah, that's why I say for solo queue when people are, because everyone always gets into these arguments of you should have been here. That's why I did this. It's like you have to play in the reality like that you're in right now in that second, and you have to update your choices based on that. But
that's actually a really good point. I was thinking about mentioning that too because I think solo queue actually trains you to be very good at like paying attention to when your teammates are not doing what they're supposed to. Because there will be so many times where, especially as jungle, I'm like, okay, my mid is prio, my bot has prio. I can get this Dragon here. But then that's not guaranteed. A lot of people will just, not do what you would expect them to do.
Yeah.
And so it does add that little extra layer of awareness of like, okay, this is what should happen in the game, but what's actually happening. And so I think there is value in being able to pay attention to that, but I think I'm still kind of on the side of you should be able to trust your teammates to do what is expected of them, which comes from playing together and reviewing things and making sure everyone understands their piece and what's going on. Not to say it's all his team's fault. Obviously, like Azale said, I do agree with the part of, if it's clear your teammate's not doing the right thing and then you just consciously go into a bad situation to teach them a lesson, consciously or not, that's also not good. So, I mean, it's tough, and it's a situation where both people should do better. But I'm more on the side of like, if you're doing the right thing and your teammates should be doing the right thing and you go for it, I'm like, I would blame the other people more.
I hope I'm excited for the growth of this team though, because LYON, this is one of the teams that when it was put together as some kind of headline grabbing like super team, getting Berserker back, former MVP, inspired the most recent MVP of North and South, and we're looking at there being a pretty like steep curve for this team as far as where they can go if they can work together well. So I have some pretty high hopes. I hope that that they can get to MSI as well and perform internationally again.
Yeah, I mean it just looks so winnable against JDG that's what made it hurt more, is that every game you can see how the path to victory, right? And I definitely think there is a lot of room for growth. Obviously, the team hasn't been together that long. And I think Dokla, individually did not perform well at all at first stand. And we have seen him do a lot better. When you think back to Worlds, obviously he did a lot better at Worlds. And so it is always one of those things, though, like when I see some interviews, like Berserker, gave an interview basically saying like, oh, like, we're not going to be able to beat the LCK LPL teams before they even went. I'm like, is this like a nameplates on thing? You know what I mean? Like, how much are you kind of in your own head sometimes? Because with some of these plays where, they are getting a little bit more nervous, they are getting a little bit, I think, kind of taken advantage of in that way, where it's like you're sweating because of who you're playing against more than because of the situation in the game.
Yeah, I really, that attitude makes me so sad when I hear that, like the early Berserker interviews of not having hope, because at the exact same tournament, whereas we're kind of judging LYON's performance by like, oh, we kind of expected them, to at least beat Brazil and then like maybe look good or do well and take a game or some compete. Games off LPL.
Yeah.
We didn't really expect anything versus Gen G. But then at the same tournament, you have these G2 players and their mentality is we're going to win. We're so much better. Like, it just seems like such a better mindset. Of course, they've been able to play against with each other for a long time. And then obviously when you have Caps on your team and he has so much history of success, like there's a lot of things that would make their, mentality a lot easier to have a good mentality about it and an attitude about it. But at the same exact tournament, and they're like, oh, they 3-0 Gen G, and Skumond is also popping off, and he's also like so nice in every interview and talking about his how good his teammates are and blah blah blah, and having the two so close together at the same tournament was like, oh man, just G2 team is making me kind of jealous. But I do have some high hopes for this team. I went to play, speaking of Dokla specifically, I felt real bad because he was pretty down on his own performance. We did, because we had the week off, get to go play our beach volleyball. And I made a joke about, I forget exactly what the joke was, but it was basically about LYON.
But it was really funny.
It was really funny. And it was about LYON losing and Dokla. But Dokla didn't.
He didn't laugh. What?
Yeah, it was great.
Remember
no sense of humor.
No, but he didn't even bite back at all. It was my fault. Like, I got picked off, and I was like, oh no, I'm sorry.
You kicked the puppy.
Yeah, because he just like immediately was like, yeah, I could have played with Win better. Like, I got picked off a bunch of the side, and I was like,
too soon.
But yeah, so
if they lose that MSI, it was Kobe's fault.
But also
they beat down Dokla mentally.
Even because we had Dokla on the analyst desk afterward, and he was doing the interview, and immediately after the series too, you could tell like they're all thinking about their own mistakes a lot.
Yeah.
And so I do have hope that they can like get to the point where they think that they can win and don't feel desperate. Because, there were definitely some plays later into some of those games where, like flashing forward to go for some crazy stuff because they're like, we're losing. We can't do anything versus these guys. Go.
It's tough. It's tough when you've been losing, coming off of getting 3-0'd by Gen G. I'm sure if they're scrimming those Eastern teams, like scrimming Eastern teams is like such a rough experience most of the time. Sometimes you can win if your team's really good and it's a good patch for you, but a lot of the time you are just getting destroyed everywhere. It's like lanes are going bad. You feel like you're getting out-drafted every game. It feels like nothing you do works. And so I kind of get where they're coming from. And I don't think you should say it in an interview. You should at least fake it kind of deal. I don't think you should go in being like, yeah, no chance. Like, we're going home quick. Like, let's get this over with kind of deal. I don't think that's great. But I do think it's hard to fake the confidence because it sounded like G2 was actually just winning scrims. Right? I think that didn't feel fake. They actually knew they could win.
LYON had the best scrim record against them. We're the scrim world champs.
I was going to say, I believe Dokla himself was saying, yeah, we were really competitive and close with G2 and scrim. So that was also some very good news. He was like, yeah, there's not a very big difference. So yeah, we can also compete. I've got confidence. The fake it till you make it thing too is actually so funny because there's a lot of like psychology that really backs that up, that it actually will manifest because
I think it's important.
repetition. And so like the fake it till you make it, like it rhymes, so people are like, oh, that's cool, but it's actually
where there is dilution, there is hope.
Yeah, it actually it actually does not hurt. It does, it can't help.
I mean, the opposite does hurt, and that's the bigger thing for me. Is that I remember with one of my teammates when we used to play tournaments, he had this habit of like when a game was going bad, he'd be like, we're screwed. We can't do anything. This game's like in the middle of a game,
depressed.
And then everyone gets depressed, and you're not talking about. Like, even if you are kind of screwed and everyone knows it, there might still be a small chance you can win the game, and you're not focusing on the chance you have to win the game and that kind of thing. And so I do think through that lens, it is actually really important to, like, even if it is delusional and you all know you're probably screwed in this game and it's going real bad, you should still focus on the small percent chance you have to win, right? Like in any given circumstance, whether it's a 90% chance from your spot or 1%, you should be really focused on that. So we had to make like a literal rule. We're like, okay, we're not allowed to talk about like anything negative during the game. Like save it for after.
Yep.
Yeah.
That on C9 we had something similar. I don't think anyone ever would like doom post in mid game, but we definitely would have just like a agreement that no hindsighting in the game. If something went terribly, you just wouldn't address it. You just
talk about it after.
What sums were used. What's happening next. Definitely good. I think, going off of the doom posting. That's a really common thing in solo queue. And then the worst is the whole game is just saying we lose. And then say you do end up losing in a completely winnable game, and they'll go like, I told you guys this at 5 minutes. I'm like, dude, if you're trying to lose, it's not that hard to lose on purpose, right? It's like, don't feel good because you said we're going to lose and we did. Like, what are you saying,
It's like a 35-minute game. It's close. Told you guys at 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just like, damn, nice, man. Like, how about you try to win next time? And maybe that'll happen too. Like,
the whole time the guy's doing the bare minimum. He's like farming a couple camps and recalling at full health to go by and like going back out, farming his camps again. Like, no, of course we lost. So yeah, that's definitely accurate. On the thing that you talked about with solo queue having some benefits of like training the mentality of, well, it does actually train you to react to imperfect scenarios if your teammates don't do what's expected. We had that topic come up again recently because Jojo, playing over in Europe, of course, gave a little interview where the headline was pretty funny.
This one was on RiftGG. The website is down, so I can't tell you what the author was, but it was from RiftGG.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I'm looking at this thing here too to see what the author.
Oh, maybe you have it. But yeah, he was basically saying that.
Well, I have the exact quote.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
He said, "You learn way more about the game watching Vons than you do laning against Scrub Daddy 400 on Malzahar in solo queue." And yeah, it just says RiftGG. Let me go find. You continue. I'm gonna go to the website.
Their website's
and see if we
down.
Can find who did it.
But yeah, I mean, I agree to a point. I think that there is like value in both, right? I think that. Probably the perfect world exists somewhere in the middle, and I think sometimes this kind of attitude gets memed because sometimes it's used as an excuse for people who don't want to play solo queue, right? And they don't want to practice. So they're just like, no, like it's just more efficient to do what I'm doing. And I think there's merit to both sides. Like you need to play the game a lot. That's just a reality to like build your muscle memory, to learn new champions, to do all these things, keep your reactions sharp, but also. People who are just like mindlessly playing brain off solo queue games, not even really engaging in it, like that at a certain point doesn't have as much value as just like watching VODs, right? So I think to me, it's always just been like focused practice, regardless of how you're doing it, is going to be the most valuable. And if you can mix in VOD watching where you're like actually paying attention and analyzing the VODs with solo queue where you're really trying to improve with scrims where you're really trying to improve, then that's going to be the most valuable. And I don't think that should be a hot take or anything, but to me, it's like the answer is always somewhere in the middle where it's like there's value from everything. But if you do too much of one and not enough of the other, then you're probably hurting yourself.
Yeah, definitely. It's a weird one for me because I don't think the reason you play solo queue necessarily is to learn stuff. Like, obviously, watching a VOD of a really good player, you will learn stuff. But usually when you're practicing, it's more about just repetition. It's like hammering out the mistakes because you're not playing perfectly. There's always things each game you're doing that could be better, right? So even if you're not necessarily learning anything from playing against Malzahar, and solo queue's full of just degeneracy that isn't going to show up in a pro game, but it's just about making sure you're really comfortable on your champions, because if you don't play any amount of time where you're not engaged with the game or playing or VOD viewing, I mean, obviously, you need rest, but if you're just wasting your time, then you start falling behind. It's the little things, you might make some mistake that you otherwise wouldn't have, because I've always seen the best players at any given time are the ones who don't really need to be reminded to just queue it up. They just want to play as much as possible. They just keep going and practicing until they don't make the mistakes anymore because they've just done it so many times. They don't even think about it.
I mean, obviously, if you're going to play solo queue, you're not going to learn a lot of macro. That's definitely going to be better for our VODs, but it is important to keep your mechanics. And at least I feel like, because a lot of it is like muscle memory, just when you're playing a champion, to be able to do things smoothly and cleanly. And there are specific things that you can still practice in solo queue. And so I definitely agree with both of you guys, of course, that both are important in different doses. And it's actually applicable to a lot of different jobs in esports, not just for pro players. This discussion even happens with casters, where there's casters that are like, oh yeah, you just gotta watch all the VODs of LCK and LPL to analyze all these matchups, because the matchups don't go the same way in solo queue. And then they use and then I'm like, well, that is partially true, but then they use that to be like, so that's why I don't play the game at all. And I'm like, well, I can definitely hear from listening to you that you don't play the game at all, because there's like other stuff that they say that's just
call them out. Give me a name.
That's just so strange, right? So I think that it is important, like you're saying, to mix both. VOD, high quality VODs are very important, but so is playing the actual game and staying connected. And so that's why I value it as well, just personally. Still, I've never stopped playing. And then also we have interviews that I feel really validated from, because coaches like Tabe, who's considered one of the best coaches in the history of the game, he made a really big point that I still play solo, or he still plays solo queue, to at least up to a master's level, to be able to put into practice some of his ideas. There's like some things that you can still test in solo queue that are not like pure pro play macro or something, and it does help you stay connected to the game and relate to other people that play the game. So
I also think it's not a fluke that when you look at a lot of the world's best players when they're playing at their best, and you look at how they're doing in solo queue, it turns out that a lot of these guys are at the very top of the ladder, right? It's solo queue is not everything. Your ranking is not everything. We've seen examples of that too, where people who dominate in solo queue try to go pro. It doesn't really work out in the same way. But it's no mistake that when you're talking about G2, it's like Skumon and Caps are two guys that are at the very top of the ladder. There's some of these players that are so dominant for so long. When you talk about some of the best Korean players and some of the best Chinese players who have been at the very top forever, and it feels like anytime I look at the leaderboards, anytime I look at the top challenger, you're going to see those guys up there, right? And I don't think that's a fluke either. So I do think that there is a lot of value in it, and sometimes it can be. I mean, it can be hard to practice that much and to not get burned out, and sometimes people just want to break and they want to kind of, I think, have a reason for that, and sometimes it's a little bit of justification. But just like with solo queue being garbage if you're not putting in effort, I think the same is true with VOD reviews, right? If you're just kind of half watching this, I know I've seen sometimes watching some scrims and going to team houses in various places and stuff, and it's like sometimes watching players do VOD review, and they're like have something else on one monitor and the other VOD's just playing. And it's like, well, if you're not actually paying attention to it, you're not really getting anything from it either.
I mean, this is one of our favorite classic caster stories about Freak that you reminded me of, because we were at Worlds, I don't remember what year, but it was 4 or 5 years ago, a while ago. Freak was still casting, and we were all in our little like green room where everyone's getting ready and stuff. And on the monitor, there's a game playing, but Freak is sitting in front of this, and so there's a game playing. Freak is sitting in front of it, but he's looking at his phone, playing a mobile game, like completely in there, you know, like some gotcha game or whatever, like spammy or whatever. And then he looks up after like 15 minutes or something. He's like, guys, keep it down. I'm watching this VOD. And he looks back down at his phone.
Oh no, I was telling him to turn off the volume because he's listening to a VOD loud as hell. And I'm like, brother, you're not even watching it.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I am. I'm like, mother, you are playing like Clash Royale or something. I'm like, and then I pause it. I'm like, tell me what happened in this game. You didn't know a single thing that happened.
It's definitely the same thing. But as I like your report about like putting intention into VOD watching, because I come into this problem when we're like prepping for Worlds and you have to prep for so many teams at the same time. Sometimes I'm just like watching VOD after VOD, and I'm trying to pay attention. I'm even taking notes, and they're still like they bleed together, you know. And I'm like, wait a second, what game did that happen in? When did this happen or whatever? And like things can just get kind of mushy if you don't have like proper intention and then breaks to like remember lessons that you've learned and stuff. And so, yeah, it seems like usually the best course is involving a mix of everything. Staying connected to the game in some way, I do think is important, to at least play it some at all and not just be a pure VOD watcher.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking of staying connected to the game, we got April Fool's merch that's coming out here.
You can be connected too.
There you go. I actually really like this shirt. It's a little bit small for me. Otherwise, I would have been wearing it. But we got the Dumpling and Moo Moo. We got new merch here. It's the new April Fool's merch that just came out. We got Dumpling, Darlings, and Moo Moo. We got the Durian Defender Rammus tees. And then also there's a Pengu Garen figurine that came out and a Baby Galio plushie. You can check it out on merch.riotgames.com. If you're interested, go grab yours now. The patch notes also just came out, 26.7. Doesn't feel like a super big one. The only one that kind of is interesting to me is the support farming changes, where they took off the restrictions from support farming. So there's no longer a cap on that. I don't really think it's going to be super relevant for pro play at all, but I was thinking like it could be interesting, where you're doing like the fasting Senna stuff. Like I wonder if there's some strategies there where it could kind of be impacted a little bit, where it's like, okay, you have your farming TK or whatever, but now like Senna could take like a larger portion of the gold while still playing support or something, like with a support item. Because if you get to play support as Senna, you can focus more on farming souls, especially in like melee matchups. It's really easy to farm a lot of souls if you're not focusing on farming minions. So I was kind of wondering, like maybe there's something there where Senna could start picking up minions earlier, or like try to accelerate in some way. Otherwise, I don't really see it as affecting pro, but definitely is one of those ones in solo queue where when you read that, you're like, is my brand just going to take my whole wave now?
Well, he probably was going to already, but he'll at least get more gold this time.
That's the real answer.
Yeah, it's definitely it's one of those things that when you read it, you're like, that might lead to some bad stuff. But I do think a big difference is before, when it was a problem, it was when you could get like multiple of those on a team, and now you can only have your support with it, and they're the only person who has access to ward, so they're going to want to go around warding and whatnot. So I think it's fine. It seems like in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not going to change too much. I think the Senna example is probably one of the ones that like could show up, but even then, I think fasting Senna hasn't. No. I mean, we've seen a little bit of it with Sion and whatnot, but it's a weird one because with the way that you select your role when you go into champion select, I don't know if you're even allowed to have your bot laner play the Senna and your support play the Sion or whatnot, unless
but you can swap role in champ select. You can trade roles.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure how it works, because I remember talking to Pobelter about it when he was doing the the Forsen League. And you're in those custom games, you have to choose your role when you start the champ select. And I don't know if it'll let you switch.
Oh, you can't trade role in champ select?
I'm not sure. I haven't played since they had the role selection whatnot in custom games. So
I just assumed you could, because you can in solo queue.
Yeah.
It's different in tournament realm and custom games.
Yeah, it would be It would be a pretty interesting restriction if you just couldn't play it for that reason. But there'd probably be some kind of workaround for it, because if people wanted to use that strat and there was just some like arbitrary reason that they couldn't, it would be kind of unfortunate. But yeah, I don't think that change is going to affect games too much. Maybe the AD carries can be a little bit more nervous if they have like a Xerath or brand support on their team. Swain support, actually, kind of insane.
The first thing I thought, well, at least when your AD carry dies as a support now, like you can, like if your AD carry is dying a whole bunch and they're never there, it does help that scenario. So it's like it's less bad then, because at least if your terrible AD carry is dead all the time, then at least somebody can make use of a bunch of extra money. But it's probably not going to have too big of an effect. I was listening to the Cloud9 podcast, and Sven was talking about.
Why'd you point to me? I'm not doing that anymore.
It's just off into the distance. Cloud9 is actually located there.
I see. Okay. I'm always making it about myself.
Cloud9 merch now.
Sven was bringing up the point that the last time when it was really a problem was because at that time you could have both players have the warding item, and so you have double the wards, and everybody would be farming. But now, because of the roles, then only one can still have the wards, so there won't be like an over proliferation of wards. And so I think the roles, like they kind of said in their post, the devs said in their post, they think the roles will be like kind of the checks and balances for this, because you don't want to take a bunch of extra money away from the AD carry who has the AD carry role with extra gold income and everything like that. So we'll see, though, because they also said on the podcast they're going to try and practice some degenerate stuff and see if it's broken. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there could be a world where there's something interesting that, Lee Sin, you could just theoretically make your carry be the support, and then you have something with him who maybe spikes at one item, they farm early, and then once the support finishes their quest, they just take over and farm, and your other guy's kind of the support who can't ward, but they're just, like a Pantheon or what, I don't know. All just theory crafting, but, maybe we'll see some fun degeneracy.
Yep, it is interesting. There's been a number of changes. None of them feel too big, to be honest. So like there's not a lot that's like really interesting to talk about. Rel got a buff. There's some enchanter nerfs that are trying to obviously shift the meta a bit, because I just think enchanters are just too strong. We started to see that a lot at first stand, that enchanters were either just getting banned or picked in almost every single game. I've talked about that a lot. We talked about it even before the season started. It's the role quest changes. You get so much more gold, and enchanters just scale way better. You can realistically get in pro games now to multiple items as a support. And when you can get to 2 items, 3 items, whatever, you just scale so much better than the melee supports do. So they're doing a couple changes. Nami is getting a nerf. Karma's getting a nerf. Rel is getting a buff. So
they don't seem that big though, because I think the way they're doing these nerfs, like the Karma one is just to your empowered E shield for later. So it's
35 off each shield.
Yeah, though. But the way they're not attacking how crazy poke you are in lane. So like you're still gonna be the same lane power, and they're just making the pay or the trade-off for picking a Karma bigger, because your team fight value was so much with the empowered R shield later on. And so it's just kind of interesting to me, and I actually like changes like that, where it's not just like, all right, we'll take off some damage here, some health here, and buff like that. It's like, okay, this area of the champion we're gonna nerf, but we'll leave one of the strengths still the same, like lane bully style. Part of the champion is still going to be the same. So I do kind of like that.
Nami's is a bit more lane focused. It's like the bounces are more of a nerf per bounce. So it's like, it used to be minus 10% effect per bounce, and now it's minus 20. And so like obviously all the Nami players are looking for these triple bounce W's and stuff early on. And so that's going to be less effective. But yeah, in general, it's very small changes. There's an increase on the Veigar ultimate cooldown. Graves lost some base AD. Callista is getting a little bit of a buff on Ren damage. It's pretty minor. I will say Cassio is a champion that's already pretty popular in pro play, and Cassio got base mana buff and the Twin Fang buff as well. It is like pretty slight. but it is 8 damage per E at max rank, so pretty slight. But the mana thing is always one with Cassio that can actually be pretty impactful, because Cassio really does hurt for mana early on, and sometimes you can actually find yourself in these situations where you just hit 1 Q and you can just chase people down with ease and win a lane early on.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the only reprieve for your opponent as Cassio, is like she just runs out of mana, because if Cassio had no mana for whatever reason, if she was a manaless champion, that would be rough to play into, because she does so much damage. If she hits a Q and then can get in range and start spamming E on you, that's not many things are beating that in those early trades. So yeah, she'll have a little bit more potential to do that. I don't know. Has she really been doing well in pro play? I anecdotally feel like she loses most of the time I see her.
I feel like she's been on the deeper side into Fearless. So not like, game 1 picks or anything like that. But I think she's been okay. And, maybe this does bump her up a little bit more. But I don't think it's going to be anything overbearing or anything like that. My biggest question for this whole patch is, me personally in solo queue, do I stop banning Graves now? Because that has been my perma ban. And
I played against him today with Shyvana, and I was beating him in fights. So
okay,
I didn't realize the patch had already come out when I was playing. Because the thing is, I'm like, okay, I want to play some Shyvana, and normally I perma ban Graves, but you have to ban Sylas if you're picking Shyvana. That matchup is comically skewed. Like Sylas is so strong with Shyvana ult that it's unplayable. So I banned the Sylas. They first took Graves. I'm like, oh man, I wanted to play Shiv. I'll pick it anyway. But yeah, it wasn't that bad. So yeah, sometimes those 2 AD or whatnot can have bigger effects than it might seem on the surface.
Yeah, because he's basically attacking as much as he possibly can the whole game. Like he's farming all the time, or like fighting people all in between farming the whole time. And 2 AD certainly in the past has pretty heavily affected him. So that's probably a % or 2 win rate change, and I guess I'll have to try it. I'll unban him
at your own risk.
If I lose 2 games, then he's going back on the ban.
Just blame the playtest team.
Yeah, now it's actually so nice. Now we can blame Meteos or flame Meteos each patch. If we don't like it.
Right as Freak is moving off live balance, we can't blame him anymore. So now we needed someone else to blame.
Yeah. It's funny, since taking the contracting role, a lot of my friends or just people in this stream they think I'm sure you guys have got it the whole time. Any association with Riot, it's just like, hey, can you buff my favorite champion, nerf my most hated champion, and ban this person?
Why did you do this?
Well,
it's like, oh yeah, I don't really have anything to do with any of that stuff, but sure.
I get so many. Please, dude, I'm totally not toxic. Can you get me unbanned? and then they'll like send me something, and that's just actually crazy. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I could forward this to Drew Levin. Maybe they'll sort through that. But
get the hit squad on it.
So many people are like, come on, this was totally unjustified. All I said was this, and this, and I was like, whoa. No reply.
Yeah, and then you just see in chat like, so the summoner has been muted. Blah blah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they usually forget the really bad stuff. They'll point to one game where they're like, yeah, all I did was I didn't help my losing bot lane one time, and I'm banned for it. I'm like, huh? What about like all the
slurs,
complete heinous chat? And they're like, well, that game my team was so bad. I'm like, oh, okay, so they deserved it. Sounds like you might have deserved your punishment as well. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely crazy. We are going to take a quick break though, and then we will be right back to talk about our power rankings and LCS.
Dude, this lobby is kind of comfy. It feels different.
If this is different, I like different. I'm staying right here.
Are you guys serious? We're about to get into game.
Emily, let us enjoy it.
You guys need to lock in. Maybe this'll help.
Oh no, not already.
Welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia. It's time to talk about some LCS. Spring Split is going to be kicking off this coming weekend, which reminds me, by the way, we are going to be live in the Riot Games Arena for April 4th and 5th, so you can get your tickets now on the LCS website or on Riot Games website. You can go find your tickets. It's going to be April Fool's themed tailgates before the games this weekend from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. The ticket link will be in the description, so you can just use that if you would like, and it should be a lot of fun to kick off the Spring Split.
They're gonna have like games and stuff set up. I've heard that.
I like games.
I've heard that Cloud9 has some sort of reaction speed new game that they're gonna set up. So we'll see. We'll see about that. And there's always boba and free food and stuff like that too. So it's a good time. Now the power rankings that you brought up, they need some adjustment from lock-in power rankings because a couple of those did not go as we expected. And one of the funniest ones, because previously you and I had TL as number one. I believe Meteos, you still had Cloud9 as number one, and you put TL like second or something probably last split.
Yep.
But that was one of the biggest like differences between where they actually placed and where we and a lot of people thought they were going to be placed because again of all these scrim rumors that were happening, and because they had played their boot camp in Korea and played in Kespa Cup and stuff, and so there was a lot of stuff that we were pointing towards. Okay, this will probably be some early success for this team. You know, they've got the extra time and advantages, and it really didn't pan out. But still all lock-in long while they're not performing on stage. Everyone's still like, oh yeah, you know, the scrims are still going great. Like they're still crushing everybody. And then Cloud9, people are like, yeah, that, you know, TL is still way better than all these other teams that they're smashing and stuff. And it's just like, I'm not going to put them first again, but I am still going to place them higher than they placed in the lock-in tournament. Honestly, I guess we should just say we didn't actually aggregate all of our power rankings, did we here?
Well, our top three are all
our
the
top
same.
three are all
so
the
our
same,
top three are all LYON, C9, then TL.
Yeah.
Then it starts to differ a little bit. I had FlyQuest fourth, while Kobe and Meteos had Sentinels fourth. I think the biggest difference here, maybe we can just start talking about the differences, because I think the bottom half, it gets pretty hard, and I think that kind of makes it interesting, right? Because it doesn't feel like there is just like a guaranteed last place team. I had FlyQuest all the way up at fourth. Meteos had them in eighth. So that is the biggest discrepancy, I think, out of all the power rankings. So
okay, so
go forth. And
you know, I will start by saying I'm not a FlyQuest hater in any way. What I base this off of is basically how I feel like the team's trajectory was during the first split. And granted, I think FlyQuest had a really hard schedule. That being said, I think that the way that they played kind of trended downward the more that they played. In the same way that we talk about Berserker feeling hopeless on LYON against the international teams, I think FlyQuest might have been feeling kind of hopeless and desperate in their games. And so I think that for a team with really young players, they came in with this bravado, confidence. They were making really flashy, cool plays. But the more we saw them, it felt like they just were playing worse each time. And so that makes me a little concerned for the team, whether or not they'll be able to bounce back. I don't necessarily think they're guaranteed last. I don't think they're guaranteed the worst team, but it's just of all the teams in here, I think that some of the other ones have a bit better chances.
What about Shopify though, right? Because you're talking about trajectory. Like Shopify didn't win a single game.
That's fair, which is why I had them seventh. I think for Shopify,
their trajectory wasn't downward because it was just flat. It was just a dead heartbeat at the
right. That's fair. That's fair. For Shopify specifically, since this team has been around, or like that roster of contracts and fudge, you know, going back to energy and whatnot, they're just so inconsistent that I think if they did really well, I would be more likely to rank them lower. Because they did so bad, I don't think they could get
because
worse.
They're so inconsistent and they were so bad in the first split.
Yes.
They can't possibly be
they're due for wins now because they can't consistently lose.
It's got to go up.
Yeah. I think that they're kind of...
That's crazy.
I think maybe they're going to win. And also, you know...
maybe they're going to win.
Yeah, I think that their games didn't look all terrible. There were some hope occasionally, but... like Zinni didn't show up at all, you know, did not live up to the hype. But we've seen before, Quid's debut was pretty rough. I think it's totally possible that with a little bit more experience, being here longer, he finds his footing. And I don't think they're a last place team looking at the roster. Maybe, but
Yeah, they were last time, but maybe not this time.
I mean, it's interesting. Like
They'll win a game.
I'll talk about FlyQuest a bit because like I had them the highest, right? To me, I kind of looked at it a little bit differently than you did. Like, yes, their trajectory did go downward. You know, it felt like Griffin really struggled against the top junglers, right? When he was playing against Blower and stuff, like and Inspired, he was really struggling. But that being said, I feel like this team looked better in Split 1 than what I expected them to do, and I expected them to grow throughout the year because they have a lot of young players, a lot of new players, right? Like Cryogen, Griffin, Gakkos. I thought they were going to struggle more than they did overall in the first split. So for me, like the fact that they actually did have a pretty hot start and looked good against the like shall we say, like tip top teams. I thought was pretty promising because I do think this is a team that has like a really high ceiling, has a lot of mechanically talented players. So I'm pretty excited for them. Like, you know, Cryogen and Masu did way better as a 2v2 for most of the split than I expected. I know in their final series they kind of got ran by LYON. But to me, Masu and Cryogen were, you know, one of the best 2v2 lanes that we had in the league throughout most of the lock-in. They got tons of 2v2 kills. Griffin was doing well and kind of like playing his own unique style. So I'm still pretty excited for this team, and I do feel like they have a pretty big upside because of the amount of talent and because of the amount of experience they have, right? Where it's like, you know, there's a lot of issues that they have that I think could be fixed through coaching, and there's a lot of things that they, you know, have like as far as their innate skills that I think can't necessarily be taught that they kind of like already have.
Yeah, the biggest thing that will determine FlyQuest success for me is can they develop a strong in-game leader, because their early stages of a lot of games are good, but they're all so young, and they need someone to be more calm, I think, in the mid game and late game to focus the team more, maybe, and you know, have that kind of inspired effect of like aligning everyone. Even though we already talked about the kind of loss of that for LYON at first stand. But that alignment in game, like a coach can do a lot out of game.
Yeah.
But I think they're also going to need, you know, someone really to be like, all right, I'm going to be the in-game leader, or at least maybe the team. It doesn't have to be a single person. The team can decide like how they're going to communicate or how they're going to talk about the goals for the next couple of minutes in the game, how they want fights to go, that type of stuff. If you get into the habit of talking about that ahead of time, then it makes it way easier to you know, play out their mid game and stuff than kind of what we saw. So, you know, I also have high hopes for them, but I put like Sentinels above them just because I've already like seen that from Sentinels. And it's to be expected when you have so many veteran players on this team. And I thought they were able to hold it together. Even at America's Cup, I was like, that's about how I expected them to play and perform. So I kind of bumped them above a little bit as far as like, I think they're going to be more consistent in what they're going to deliver.
I've got a hot take. I think that teams are not guaranteed to get better as they play longer. So I think that that's sort of played into my reasoning for FlyQuest, is that because they're so young and it seems like they trended downwards, they might not actually be taking the correct lessons from their games. It's a very real thing that just because you lose, it doesn't mean you accurately were able to figure out.
Improve.
Yeah, you know,
it's a lie.
You might not realize why you lost that and draw a completely off base conclusion. And then, I mean, with every team, pretty much, you're not always going to be able to pinpoint the thing that went wrong right away, and it takes different attempts and whatnot. But especially when you're super young and new, if you don't have someone who's, you know, very knowledgeable about the game who can help lead you in the right direction, sometimes you'll just go down the completely wrong path. And then, because with FlyQuest games, it felt like a lot of the time it was Griffin going for aggressive early plays and then not having the support from his team, right? Like we saw a lot of those games where it would be some disaster happened in the early game. And then it felt like the way that they were drafting was just trying to pick all lane dominant stuff. So maybe they have these really rough early games where a play went bad, and then their takeaway is, all right, we just got to pick more prio. So you have Masu on these like non-scaling champions all the time. And so I don't know if that's what's happening, but I just think that that could be happening. And I think a lot of the times with some of the lower teams in the standings, that's probably what's going on, is they're just not getting the right reads from practice, and if you don't have access to scrimming with the best teams, you might not even know what playing the game correctly looks like. So yeah, I don't think it's guaranteed you improve the more you play. Sometimes teams will actually just get worse.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just really interesting in general because I feel like there's actually a lot of different arguments to be made around power rankings in this split, even though we were pretty unified at the top. I think that was kind of arbitrary. I mean, LYON, I think, is coming in obviously as the favorites. Like they won, they look good. They felt, even though they had their struggles at first stand, throughout playoffs in lock-in, they looked by far the most unified, right? They looked by far the most on the same page, and I think they're going to come in and they're going to be going that same way. But C9, for most of lock-in, looked like the best team, right? Like they looked really, really good. Then they completely face-planted in finals and in America's Cup. So everyone, I feel like, is almost like overreacting the other way. Like when I see the talk about them online, people are talking about C9 like they're total garbage, but like I would not be shocked if C9 even won the second split. I think that is the hump they have to get over, is actually showing up in the big match and showing up, for finals or for one of these big important matches. But I think that they could be right in there, and they showed that for most of the split. TL as well. I think TL had a pretty bad split, like a really bad split. They honestly, I think, if you replay that Dignitas TL tiebreaker for the knockout stage, if you replay that from the position the FBI was in a number of times, Dignitas usually wins, right? Like I think that's fair to say. So like they were close to not even making playoffs, but yet I would also not be surprised if you came from the future and told me TL wins spring split, right? Like I wouldn't be shocked because they have a lot of talent on that team. So I think that's one of the things that's kind of making it really interesting for me going into this split is that, yeah, LYON are the de facto number one. They are going to come in as the favorites, but if C9 and TL perform well, I think the top of the table is going to get really interesting really fast. And I do feel like there's pretty reasonable arguments for most of the teams beyond that to be the ones that are kind of like rounding out the middle of the pack, right? Like whether you believe that FlyQuest is going to get worse, better. Sentinels, had a strong showing. Like you can even make arguments for Dignitas and DSG and Shopify that they should be able to improve. So I do think it's actually I'm pretty excited for the second split.
Yeah, I think because we always just do normal traditional power rankings, and it gives the idea that it's top to bottom, this is the pecking order. But if we did a like magnitude of power discrepancy between teams, we'd have a blob. This split would be so much tighter than usual. Like I feel like usually, and sometimes in the past, like last year, we would even had like, okay, well, the first four are pretty close. They're all like really powerful. And then the second four would be like really tiny, magnitude of difference and power. So all the other ones would be close, but like so far away from the top four. And it is pretty interesting how, there's way more condensed. I feel like the league overall is a lot more competitive with each other, which does make it very, very interesting and makes power rankings a lot harder because you're just seeing the 1 through 8 as normal, and a lot of these I think have some pretty strong wiggle room based on individual performances that we do see, or like how compatible players are going to be in this split and how well they're going to work together. So some of the other big differences though, you talked about the Team Liquid one and kind of the Cloud9 one. I mean, I don't know. Cloud9 one is probably. Do we need to talk about more because the discussion of the, America's Cup and First Stand are so prevalent? Maybe people are like, "Why don't you have them lower?" Type thing, or do you think?
Sure.
Or do you think people are gonna kind of be on board with that? I mean, I guess we could go over what the matchups are going to be.
I think with C9 and TL, I could totally see them bot 4ing either of those teams just due to. Booming or whatever, but I don't know. I think the question just comes down to who are you putting above them, right? I think LYON number one makes sense. Inspired has yet to show that he's just not going to win, right? I was kind of doubtful this year. Yeah, I was somewhat doubtful this year. I was looking at it coming in being like, okay, he's actually mostly played with new rosters who are players that are just going to put a lot of trust in him, and I think that is the formula that works. So how is he going to work with people who might have stronger opinions? And
he's going to break their wills too.
Yeah, I was thinking, maybe this team's just going to explode because they have all these like strong conflicting personalities. But he's shown he can make that work too. So I'm not doubting Inspired anymore. I never did a whole lot in the first place, but yeah, I think it would just be crazy too at this point. So that one totally makes sense. And then it's just tough. I think a lot of these teams, nobody looks untouchable. Like the range, the potential for each of these teams, I think is pretty big.
Yeah.
I would just look at I think some of these teams have very big weak points, whether it's like a player's performance or their team play. And so I think that's sort of, for me, the stuff that stuck out to move people down.
Yeah. I guess one of the last things for the Cloud9 discussion that I thought was interesting was the Dom has said several times, talking about how they were losing scrims still a lot, even though when they were dominating the league and all the fans and us were like seeing them perform on stage and beating convincingly, team after team. They were still losing a lot of scrims to LYON and TL. And so, he's basically been like, like those teams were like, we weren't shocked to, lose. And we thought that, those teams were going to be very powerful. So I guess there could be arguments and wiggle room for like, putting if you want to put TL even higher or something based off of that. But I think I'm all out of scrim bucks. Like I'm not biting on that anymore.
They got to prove it.
Yeah, they really do have to prove it. And I still think like a lot of the things that we saw from Cloud9 are going to be strong. APA and Blabber together, even though a lot of people love to throw flame at Blabber. It's like, he loses a lot to Inspired specifically. And then they also, of course, the America's Cup kind of crash and burn scenario. But a lot of stuff was very suboptimal for them, in those last like that time period. So I have faith that Cloud9 are going to bounce back pretty strong here. And so I think they're deserving of our second ranking, second spot ranking.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that people are overreacting a bit to like a bad stretch of games. I mean, lock-in tournament is not a full split, and they did really well for most of it. They got blasted in the finals by LYON, and then obviously they did really poorly at America's Cup. And it is an excuse. People can say it's an excuse, whatever, but like the reality is they flew down like, I don't know, 12, 24 hours, whatever it was after losing finals. And, and obviously I don't think they were in a very good mental state, and they played poorly and they got their butts whooped by Fury at America's Cup. But I don't think that having like one bad stretch of games guarantees that you're going to be just like bad for the rest of the year. And I do feel like the Blabber slander is getting a bit out of hand. I think
people love to hate on Blabber.
They do, which I find really weird because he's so nice. He's so nice. Like as far as one of the people that like has been around the league for a long time, Blabber is so happy to talk to you about the game. He's always been a top level player. He works super hard. He lives and breathes league. I never hear any of his teammates say anything bad about him, his work ethic, anything like that. And just like results wise, he's been one of the best junglers in a long time. Yeah, he's clearly not as good as Inspired, but that's true of every jungler in the league. The only jungler that you can really compare in the West right now is Skewmond, right? Who's doing really, really well, had an incredible first stand event. So you can say, he's up there, right? Or he has better current form, whatever. But like, I don't feel like there's a lot of junglers that you can really put above Blabber, in the LCS. And he's kind of proven that time and time again. Obviously, C9 fans want championships. They don't just want like almost, and they don't just want like pretty good and all that. And I get that, right? Because C9 has won a lot over the years, and they want them to be back at the top. But that being said, I feel like Blabber is maybe getting a little bit too much hate for his level of performance.
I think that's been going on for a long time with Blabber specifically, because I've definitely said it before, but I always thought he was the best player I played against for jungle. He is like extremely smart about the game. He is very hard to read and predict what he's going to do. He's super creative. I think it's probably just due to the fact that he keeps his head down. He doesn't have a super huge social media presence. He's respectful, humble, whatnot. And so people just kind of expect him. Like the expectation for Blabber is super high. So anytime he doesn't live up to that, people just see that as, underperformance and come for his head. I think also sometimes he just has these really loud mistakes compared to some other players where, there's like the crab incident that's followed him for so many years. There's a lot of plays where he'll do something that's just so crazy looking. He'll just have some mistake, like flash in engage when his team's nowhere near and just throw the whole game. And it's like, well, everybody makes mistakes. That one was pretty apparent compared to some, Every game, the losing team has mistakes. I mean, every game, everyone has mistakes, right?
Yep.
And so I think people like to latch onto Blabbers just because combination of him having really high expectations and just, yeah, he has some funny looking stuff because he plays very aggressively.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's fine to criticize him and his play, but I feel like people are talking about him like he's a bum, and it's like, come on, he's one of the best junglers in the league ever. So I do think, it's fair to have high expectations for C9, but to me, it's like give it the full split in spring split and see how C9 does, and then I think it's maybe more fair if they're struggling through all of spring. Hey, C9 is not a team to sit around and not make any changes. If this team looks really, really bad after spring, I would not be shocked to see them make changes, but I think it's a little bit too early, and they're going to have an opportunity to change the story a little bit about themselves, because our kickoff match for week 1 here, spring split, C9 versus LYON. I am actually really excited for it because I feel like if I'm C9, I will be so hungry to prove myself against this team because they whooped your butts. Everyone's talking trash about you after America's Cup, after finals. And I feel like if you come in and you win as C9, it's like the monkey off your shoulder, the monkey off your back. You get a little bit of room to breathe. People are going to get off you a bit.
I talked earlier about going to play volleyball and asking the different teams could come. We made specifically the day be Sunday so that the people from LCS teams could come, but nobody from Cloud9 could come because Cloud9 were taking 0 days off. The other teams got 1 day off. Cloud9's taking 0 days off. They're practicing all the way through. So very clearly, it's buckle down mode. Like they're locked in. And so I like to hear that, because obviously we always say this and we're always trying to, tell people like, okay, like you shouldn't be flaming so much. The players are going to feel the losses way more than you. And all of them clearly, the underperforming really hits them hard. And so they're fully locked in, no days off, practice, and show up. So I think that even make this Cloud9 versus LYON matchup is going to be a super banger for opening day.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly aren't going to come in as underdogs, I don't think. I mean, maybe LYON will be slightly favored based on recent games, but I don't think anyone should be expecting that Cloud9 can't win, because I think there's even a decent chance they do win. They've always pretty much looked very good in the beginning of splits in the year and then trend downwards throughout the year, especially near the end. So, I think they got some good motivation coming into this one.
The next series of the first day on Saturday is going to be Sentinels versus DSG. And we didn't talk about either of those teams super in depth. So I think this is a good opportunity to talk about both of them. I did say, in part of me like bumping them up above FlyQuest and putting Sentinels fourth was a lot of the consistency that they have showed, even when going down to America's Cup. And they had the same, not exactly the same travel issues because it wasn't like right after playing, but very, similar timelines there. And the veterans on the team, I have no questions about, like Huhi direction of shot calling and like impact, calling macro game and stuff like that. And so I felt like, all right, this is my like solid team. I'm putting in the middle because I feel like I know what I'm getting from Sentinels. And there is upside and there is some wiggle room. I do think that Hanbok stocks for me were personally up as the season went on as far as synergy with the rest of the team and performance. And it was interesting to get updates on interviews with like Huhi and stuff as the season went on of like what's the percentage of English being spoken versus Korean in their comms. And it like started out as like all Korean. And you could definitely tell Darkwings is like Darkwings is like, what's going on, guys? And yeah, their plays were like disconnected around mid for sure. But then as the season went on, they shifted over towards English, and it did look, like they were, had better synergy with Darkwings, especially Hanbok and Darkwings. And so I think Hanbok plays some like aggressive plays for sure, like some aggressive jungling, and plays some carry junglers pretty well. And Darkwings always love when we do have North American talent. And this dude's been grinding away forever in tier 2. And so you always want that to be rewarded, perseverance to be rewarded. And so I do think they have a pretty good shot here. It's also just a fun matchup now because we have this rivalry between DSG and Sentinels because Sentinels, the organization came in and yoinked most of the roster of old DSG from Toast And then Toast, after their first series, got to talk a bunch of trash and on stream reacting, and they beat them, and it was really fun. And the DSG roster also is very exciting because they had a lot of success with a lot of these replacement new players they got.
Yeah, I mean, this I think should be really close. DSG did win that first best of 3 that they played at started lock-in. They won that 2-1, and then they lost the best of 5 in 5 games to Sentinels. So it's across lock-in, they were 4-4 against each other. So it was really, really close, really, really competitive. Even though DSG did kind of fall off or whatever towards the end, they were part of what made lock-in exciting, because I think DSG, FlyQuest, Sentinels all kind of performed better than people expected, and that was part of what was kind of upsetting the standings. So I think it should be a fun one, and I'm excited to see more of Kyra and Sajed, to see their development. To me, that was kind of part of the most exciting part of DSG was, getting to see Kryra come in. Obviously, he wasn't there at the very beginning because of, visa issues and stuff like that. And he was who they kind of intended to build around. And seeing him come in and have some good games was really, really cool. And Sajed, while I don't think him and Lions were doing great in the 2v2s in the lanes, Sajed had some really impressive team fighting. You could tell mechanically he is very, very good in these 5v5s, and especially when he's playing as Kaisa, he had some really, really nice moments. So I think it's just fun to see the development of some of these players, and across all the teams there are at least a couple players that I'm just really excited to see kind of what you're going to look like coming into Split 2. So I think it should be a pretty good match.
Who do you think is going to win that one? The third matchup.
It's tough.
Yeah, it is a tough one. You just went over 4-4 game score.
I don't know. I feel weird predicting against Sentinels. I feel like I'm a hater, but I don't know. I think DSG is going to win. I just going to have
just be a hater. It's fine. People hate all the time. I'm going to go with Sentinels for that one. I think, I think DSG kind of had some problems toward the end, and I think they had sort of a formula that was working for them with their picks, and I think their drafts were on the better side of some of the teams, but. I don't know. I think maybe Sentinel's just a more solid team overall. Also, I've been pretty impressed with Darkwings. I think he's a player who's been trending upward a lot. I think he's someone that has been kind of like a small fish in a huge pond kind of deal of, the talent pool you're up against for LCS is hilarious because it's like...
It's the LCK talent pool.
It's all imports. So I think the fact that he's doing well in such a competitive environment is pretty promising. And just think about what he has to deal with. It's like his teammates don't speak English. In comms or whatnot. And he's been pretty impressive given the circumstances. So I'm going to go with Sentinels.
Nice. I am also Sentinels because I think the early consistency and veteran power is going to be really strong at the beginning and have the most effect then. Sunday, our matchups are Team Liquid versus FlyQuest. I said I'm done with Scrimbucks, but I'm still going to predict Team Liquid over FlyQuest.
And you still put them third in your power rankings.
And still put them third in the power rankings. So I guess, even when you think you're done with the Scrimbucks.
It's a gradual thing, It's he's quitting cigarettes, but he's still using nicotine patches, It's going to take a little bit of time.
I quit Scrimbucks, but I've got the Scrim dollary dues or whatever the hell. What were your Canadians called? Looney Tunes?
Loonies and Toonies.
Yeah. I'm on Scrim Looney Tunes now.
Toonies?
Yeah, Scrim Toonies.
Yeah, TL, you're gonna be a process. You're weaning yourself slowly off of the Scrimbucks.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be hard to not go for TL here. I think you'd have to be really a FlyQuest super fan to predict against TL here. Mm-hmm. I hope I don't hear about TL scrims. That would give me more confidence in them because for so long we've just heard about TL scrims, and it's not been manifesting. So, I mean, I think their players are good, right? I think Quid didn't really look like himself on this team.
No.
But it could just be a new environment. Like I mentioned earlier, on 100 Thieves, he had a pretty bad debut. And he's just somebody that he's a really good player. And sometimes he'll just show up and do insane stuff that really no one else will do. So for that reason, I think that this team's still very strong. But their team play was pretty lackluster, and that could be something that is improved with time. We'll have to see. But I did put FlyQuest last place, so it'd be weird to predict them over.
I also felt like even just when you're looking at individual play, not even just team play, I thought LYON actually didn't even look good in lock-in, which was so weird because I felt like across these last couple iterations, even when TL looked really bad last year, everyone's like, but they have LYON though. And LYON was still looking really good individually, even when the team was struggling. So I was a little bit surprised to see him look not that impressive. I didn't think he looked great. I didn't think Quid was impressive. I felt like, honestly, everyone except Morgan. I thought Morgan looked good individually, and LYON even talked about that, how their whole plan was basically just Morgan's the only one who's going to do anything, so we're just going to do range counter picks top and just kind of like neutralize him, and then the game will be easy. And you're like, well, that's pretty bold. And then they did it, and you're like, well, I guess that was right. So, TL is definitely going to be a team that is grinding. Yeah, people get sick of the scrim thing, but it's like scrim's also somewhat our reality. You can't have it both ways. You know what I mean? It's like people get tired of hearing about scrims for when a team is performing well in scrims, but not on stage. But it's like, okay, yeah, but then you have the other side of it where LYON was performing well in scrims and getting better and better in scrims and was doing well in stage 2, right? So a lot of times it is also correlating, and people just kind of don't always focus on that, because at the start of the split, that was definitely not true for LYON. Some people were telling me they thought they were the worst team in the league, and they improved in their scrims throughout the split, and obviously that did translate to stage. So I'm excited to see how TL looks. I'm hopeful that we are going to have this really competitive top end of the league, and TL would be part of that. So I think it should be fun. See this match. We also didn't get to see it in lock-in at all. TL versus Fly. So I think it'll be a pretty cool one.
Yep, definitely.
All right, the last one. We've saved the best for last. The Palafox Revenge Part 2. Shopify versus Dignitas. Who do you think is going to win Part 2? Huh? We got the matchup again. Last time around, Palafox was victorious and led the Dignitas soldiers to victory and kicked Shopify out. As you said, Shopify, no games. Winless. Yeah. Kangas put them first place on his power rankings, and they didn't win a single game and got last. That's like the most wrong you can possibly.
Incorrect power rankings of all time.
Actually, I don't know if anyone's ever I'm just gonna say no one's ever been that wrong before.
I would agree.
He was so wrong he ran off to Europe.
Yeah,
couldn't be seen in the country anymore. Yeah, this
Crazy.
one. I think for me, this one really just hinges on if Zinni can get it together or not. I think that if he looks like he did last split, then, he's probably going to get run by Palafox. But, Palafox also both these teams are just like, it's basically just both halves of energy that were very inconsistent all the time. So really hard to predict. I think Dig was looking pretty decent at the end of the split. I think, they had the visa issues, but once FBI and Ignar were able to show up, that's a really solid duo.
Yeah,
I would say. And, Bivoy and Seos, they're not bad, but I would still probably favor Dig there. And yeah, so I'll probably give it to Dig overall. But I do think that Shopify could turn it around this season. I wouldn't be surprised if they, came in top 4 finish. Just because they have good players on their team who've had success before. But like I mentioned initially, I think it comes down to Zinni if he shows up or not.
Yeah, and I mean, just because he had a bad first split, people are always going to use the Quid example, right? Because Quid came in, people were calling for his head on 100 Thieves. People wanted him completely off the team, and I remember when it got announced that after that first year that he was going to be coming back, people were kind of pissed. Like a lot of 100 Thieves fans were pissed, and he ended up winning the MVP. So we'll see if Zinni can turn it around. I also think that it's not just about him, because to me, Fudge had been one of the most impressive top laners in the league last year, and I did not think he had a good lock-in. It didn't feel like he's the it's not like it's just his fault or anything, but he was not making a big impact. I don't think Contracts was playing well. I think it was a whole team thing, right? This team was struggling individually. This team was struggling, to actually have much cohesion. And Dignitas did look better once they had their intended bot line with FBI and Ignar. But I also think Photon was a real bright spot for me. Photon, I think, I really liked that he was bringing out the Ignite in some of these matchups and actually putting himself in some really good spots. He had a really, really good Kennen game in a loss that kind of like stuck with me. And I feel like that if that wasn't against LYON, I remember where Inspired kept hunting him out and actually forcing his ult and kind of just like solo won that game, I felt like. But Photon, I think, is a bright spot. I feel like if their bot lane is playing well, then Dignitas should be favored, but that's just kind of based off of lock-in. And yeah, I mean, if Shopify hit as high as we know they can, then they could be actually a really solid team.
Yeah. Should be an exciting one. Can't wait for part 2. I'm hoping that Shopify do like bounce back and show some of the upsides of they're supposed to be high variance team and just got a bunch of losses last time around.
The slingshot is completely primed.
Yeah.
They're so far down.
It's like all the way down here. It's like, pew! To the
Can't
moon.
go a whole lot lower.
They went winless in lock-in. They're going undefeated in spring.
Nice.
Not even a game.
No.
Not one game.
But then in playoffs, they're going to completely bomb
Yeah,
back out. The
figure
regular
that.
season, they'll be first place,
Yeah.
and then boo, right back to the
Yeah,
bottom.
exactly. Then they're just dead last.
All right. Well, that's a pretty fun one.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. That's going to wrap it up for us here on The Dive, driven by Kia. Be sure to subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube so you don't miss an episode of Dive. Also, leave a comment and maybe leave a suggestion for Medios on how to buff your favorite champion or nerf your most hated champion.
Anyone
Don't
you
forget
need
that
banned,
too.
I'm not your guy.
Medios has you. He also personally does unban reviews.
Yep.
LCS returns this Saturday, April 4th at 1 p.m. Pacific with a finals rematch. Cloud9 hungry for some revenge against LYON. Tickets are online now. Check out the link in description and show up early for the tailgate. It's going to start at 11 a.m. We will see you there for some free coffee and boba.